It's 9 p.m. in RTD. It's time to English New Edition. For tonight headlines, we have the head of state meets with the Ghanaian emissary bearing a message from its president. In Colombo, hundreds of deaths in several attacks. Welcome to our newsroom. President of the Republic receives emissary from Ghanaian counterpart. The President of the Republic, His Excellency Ismail Omar Guelleh, has received today, late Sunday morning at the Palace of the Republic, an emissary carrying the messages of President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo of Ghana, Ghana's envoy Alan John Yeren Maten is none others than the country's Minister of Trade and Industry. His message to the head of state of Djibouti relates to the support that Ghana requires our country as part of its desire to host the Secretary of the African Free Trade Area. Ghana is, along with 6 other African countries, a candidate to host the Secretary of the African Free Trade Area. It formed this ambition since the Black Continent gathered at the beginning of this month of April 2019. The quorums of at least 22 African countries, signatories of the agreement on the free trade area. Djibouti is one of the first countries in Africa to sign and ratify the agreement on the economic and free trade area of the continent. The Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Mohamed Ali Yusuf, took part in the meeting between the President of the Republic and the emissary of his Ghanaian counterpart. After these messages with President Guelleh, the Ghanaian special envoy was delighted at the microphone of the Djiboutian press to send special messages to the Djiboutian head of state. Listen to him, please.
Yes, first, we have brought a special message from the President of the Republic of Ghana, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, to His Excellency the President of Djibouti on the implementation of the Continental Free Trade Agreement. As I'm sure you are aware, 52 countries out of 55 have now signed the CFTA to create a single market for Africa. And 22 out of the 52 countries have actually ratified the agreement, which legally brings the agreement into force. And one of the conditions for the implementation is for one country to host the Secretariat of the CFTA. Now, there are 7 countries that have submitted their bid to become the host country, and Ghana is one of those countries. In fact, we were the first to make an offer to host this secretariat. So the President of Ghana has sent a special message seeking the kind support of His Excellency, the President, for Ghana's bid to become the host secretariat for the CFTA.
For his part, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, has emphasized the bilateral relations existing between the two countries. He said Djibouti government was all ready to support international development projects around the world, and in particular in the African continent. The Minister of Equipment and Transport, Mohamed Abdelkader Musa, chaired a technical meeting on the receipt of studies on the project for constructions of the National Road 1, Dikil Galafi National Road, and King Fahd National Road 9 from Pika 51 to Tajora. Present at this meeting were the senior officials of the Saudi Development Fund's Operation Directorate, led by Mr. Abdullah Al-Ruwah, the investment advisors to the President, Mr. Fahmi Al-Haq, Acting Director General of the Djiboutian Agency Road, Mr. Usman Hussein, the Minister's technical advisor, Ahmed Abdou Ali, as well as the consulting firms of these 2 projects. The consultants have in turn exposed their studies so that the ADR can give its opinion and comments. It's important to note that constructions will start in the months following the launch of the tenders. For his part, the Minister of Transport and Equipment, Mohammed Abdul Qadir Musa Hilm, was pleased with the state of progress and thanked on this occasion the two states, namely Saudi Arabia and Japan, for the financing of this project. Note the importance of the completion of these two projects, two major projects for the social and economic development of the northern and southern regions of the country. The Minister of Equipment Transport will soon finalize the Tajarrah Balhu project to operationalize the port of Tajarrah. Its outcome should decongest road traffic at the level of Djibouti's port, because this project responds to the concerns of the national authorities to reinforce the road infrastructure capacity of the country with a view to regional integration. The Minister of National Education and Vocational Training, Mustafa Mohamed Mahmoud, and the U.S. Ambassador to Djibouti, Mr. Larry Andrigino, sponsored today in Camp Pesky the opening ceremony of a multi-stakeholders consultations workshop on the roles and contributions of Djiboutian associations working in the education sector to improve educational provision. Representatives from USAID, UNICEF, other United Nations agencies and international organizations attend the opening ceremony of this workshop as part of a project, the capacity buildings of Djiboutian Association is funded by USAID. In an opening speech, the Minister of National Education and Vocational Training, Mustafa Mohamed Mahmoud, stressed how pre-K strengthen in its fourth components the transformative projects of the MENFOP, namely the support to the management and building the capacity of schools. The Minister expressed confidence that this project will enable Djiboutian Association working in the education sector to better collaborate with the MENFOP through sensitizations and advocacy activities aimed at eliminating gender disparities in schools and colleges in rural areas, especially support for the schools project and effective participation is in the citizen project called My School for Me. The Minister of Higher Education and Research, Dr. Nabil Mohammed Ahmed, received this morning in his office the President of the Aden University, Dr. Al-Khadir Nasser Ahmed, who arrived in Djibouti for a working visit of few days. The President of the Djiboutian University, Dr. Jama Mohammed Hassan, and the Director of the Regional Offices of the NGO WAMI in Djibouti, Mr. Maysara Mohammed Saif, and the technical advisor to the Minister of Higher Education, Mr. Fahmi Mohammed, and the representative of the University of Aden in Djibouti attend this interview. At the meeting, the two sides reviewed the fraternal relations and joint cooperation between Djibouti and Yemeni Republic and ways to establish a partnership between the University of Djibouti and University of Aden. As part of his visit, the President of the University of Aden, Dr. Al-Khadir Nasser Ahmed, visited this morning at the headquarters of the regional office of the NGO WAMI in Djibouti. During the visit, the President of the University of Aden visited the office facilities, including the National Trainings and Development Center inaugurated 2 years ago. During his visit, the President of University of Aden and his delegations toured the various girls of the center, such as the electronics department, the computer department, and the sewing and embroidery department. Following this visit, the cooperation agreement was signed between the University Center for Science and Industrial Technology, overseen by WAMI, and the University of Aden, Yemeni. The agreement was signed by Dr. Al-Khadir Nasser Ahmed and the Director of the Regional Offices of WAMI in Djibouti, Mr. Maysara Mohammed Saif, who welcomed the President of Aden University, noting that this cooperation agreement would contribute to the exchanges of experiences and skills between the two parties. He pointed out that the memorandums of understanding between the two parties will allow the students of the centers to join the faculties of engineering of the University of Aden until the doctorate. In turn, the president of the Aden University expressed his thanks and gratitude to the WAMI regional director for his warm welcome, praised the effort of the offices in various areas, including education. Dr. Al-Khadr Nasser Ahmed stressed that this agreement was the culmination of the discussion that have been going on between the two sides over the past period. He added that this agreement will strengthen the ceiling of cooperation with the organizations, particularly with regard to the exchanges of experiences and skills in the coming period. He welcomed the good relations between Djibouti and Yemeni Republic, especially in the field of education. The Minister of Housing, Urbanism and Environment, His Excellency Musa Mohammed Ahmed, receives in his office Mr. Levent Shahin Kaya, new ambassador of Turkey, accredited to Djibouti. The meeting was attended by Mr. Din Abdullah Umar, Secretary General of the Ministry of Housing, Mr. Hussein Rirash Roble, the Director of Environment and Sustainable Development, Mr. Adan Hassan Elmi, Technical Advisor to the Minister. The Turkish ambassador informed the Ministers of Turkey's activity in favor of Djibouti's socio-economic development, including the constructions of the dam on Humbuli to fight against floods and to mobilize water from area. The Minister of Housing, for his part, thanked the Turkish ambassador for his contact visit and welcomed the excellent relationship between the Republic of Djibouti and Turkey. The Minister Delegate in charge of decentralization, Mohammed Aramis, went yesterday to Gal'ila, a locality on the height of the Mount Mabla in the regions of Tajura, to meet its people and its surroundings, but also representative those of the other localities of this sector, which were planned to be at the renderings for the occasion. The Minister Aramis was accompanied as usual in his regular field trips from the south to the north of the country's strong missions, including officials and executive of his department, but also the representative of the concentrate department of sectoral ministries such as those of social affairs, furthermore of the Ministry of Agriculture, ADDS, Health, Egyptian Agency of Road, with this times more the head of the national operator Djibouti Telecom. Arrivals at 11 a.m. in Gal'ila. The missions of the Minister of Decentralization was greeted on the spot by the Prefect Abdul Malik Muhammad Benoita, the Vice President of the Regional Council Abdul Umar Abdul Qadir, the parliamentarians of the zone of the Mabla Mount Hassan Umar Muhammad and Hadi Leverkale Ahmed, as well as by a large crowd, very enthusiastic after a traditional crowd head off to the trees of the villages where the meeting was held, opened by the Prefect Abdul Malik Muhammad Benoita. The latter thanked the people of this sector of Mabla. The Prefect of Tajura, Mr. Abdul Malik Muhammad Benoita, thanked the peoples of this sector of Mabla for hosting the Ministers of Decentralization and the mission he leads on the occasions of this field visit. The Vice President of the Regional Council and the Honorable Hadi Leverkale, while highlighting the fact of this presence is part of the fulfillment of their duty to listen to their children's constituents. He said, the Minister Delegate in charge of decentralization, Hamidou Mohamed Aramis, meanwhile thanked the peoples of the sector of Mabla for their hospitality. He said that these frequent field visits are part of the roadmap of the President of the Republic, very concerned about improving the living conditions of these compatriots in rural areas, and who has enjoined him listen to them to answer their complaints in real time. The minister urged his audience to strengthen the social cohesion that is their strength, but also to get rid of mentality assisted by actively participating in their own development, he said. The mayor of the capital, Fatma Awali Osman, participated at the times of the 29th International Conferences for the Protection of the Environment, organized in Cairo, in Egypt, by the International Foundations for Science in collaboration with the Organization of Capital Islamic Cities, the Unions of Arab University, and the Centers for Arab-European Cooperation, and the topics environmental protections in cities is a priority. Participation in the ceremony of the high personalities of the Egyptian government, in particular the Minister of Oil and Mining Resources, the Minister of Resources and the Irrigation, the former Minister for Foreign Affairs, the Secretary General of the Organizations of Capital and Islamic Cities, and the President of the Unions of Arab Universities. During this conference, the mayor of the city was rewarded for its number of activities in the protection and preservation of the environment for the year 2019. We regret to announce the death occurred at New York to Abdul Aziz Mahmoud Ibrahim, is born January 13, 1976 in Djibouti. The family of the deceased announces that his mortal stranger will arrive in Djibouti tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. by Turkish Airlines flight to be buried in the cemetery of Pika 12 in Anglais. For the international scene, at least 190 people, including 35 foreigners, were killed Sunday in a series of explosions in luxurious hotels and churches in Sri Lanka. Listen to the report.
At least 190 people, including 35 foreigners, were killed Sunday in a series of explosions in luxury hotels and churches in Sri Lanka, where Easter Mass was celebrated, police said. The toll could be even worse, as there are more than 300 wounded in these attacks of exceptional violence, the nature of which was not known and which were not claimed in the immediate future. This episode of violence is the deadliest in the country since the end of the civil war 10 years ago. In Colombo, 3 high-end beachfronts, hotels, and a church were hit in the morning, with at least 64 dead according to police sources. In the afternoon, at least 2 people died in a new explosion in Fort Hotel, located in Dehiwala, a southern suburb of the capital. In Negombo, a town north of Colombo, 67 people were killed in the church of San Sebastian and 25 others in a church in Batikoloa, a city of the east of the island, according to the same source. At least 35 foreigners are among the dead in this country, popular with international tourists, including the Portuguese. On Twitter, the French embassy in Sri Lanka has urged its citizens to keep away from public places and to avoid any displacement. A video taken in one of the affected churches showed many bodies curled up, the floor sweaten with rubble and covered in blood. The violence of the explosion blew parts of the roof, letting the sky glance.
The second round in Ukraine's actor Volodymyr Zelensky about to be elected president. Listen to the report.
Ukrainians have been moving massively into the polls since this morning. They are about to elect their new president of the republic and presumably to create one of the biggest political surprises in modern history. With 70% of the voting intention, in the latest polls, the comedian novice on the political scene, Volodymyr Zelensky, is the favorite of the election. In the first round, he compiled the double voice of his rival and outgoing President Petro Poroshenko.
This is it for the news. Thanks for watching us.